Hi everyone, Nicholas Belfield from DPA. Are you called DPA or DPA Lighting Consultants or DPA Lighting?
Yeah, I mean DPA lighting consultants
Is
in
the
the sense that
official way
we're
of-
not just designers. We work in all forms of lighting, so it's a broad spectrum of expertise we have.
And a solid name as well. Nicholas Belfield is a really. If there was a fire now, I would want Nicholas Belfield to carry me out of the building. That's a name you can you can trust. Nicholas, shall I give them a bit of a biography?
Please
of
do.
you? So you've been working in the lighting industry now for 27 years. Is that correct?
I guess so, somewhere around there. Yes.
And you joined DPA Lighting in 2006. You've worked extensively on prestigious projects worldwide and nationally, and you've been an integral part of the practice's growth and development over the past 2 decades. You're a partner at the London studio. And DPA, this is an amazing statistic, has completed over 7,500 projects in 80 countries over 67 years.
Yes.
Is it that old?
Yeah. We're very, very early adopters
Wow.
of practice of lighting.
And as lighting consultants, they're involved in and challenged by a wide variety of projects covering the spectrum of architectural and interior design vernaculars, from historic to cutting edge modern. What's so great about lighting? What attracted you to this profession, Nicholas?
I think, as we were talking a second ago about the DPA lighting consultants, being that we can work in all areas of lighting, that lighting can be something that's extremely technical, and it can be something that's very emotional and artistic, and having that as a day-to-day experience, working across quite a broad spectrum of that sort of medium is amazing, keeps life interesting.
So you're lighting consultants. You obviously then work closely with architects, right? Has there been fights? Have you been hit in the face?
No, I mean we're
with an object?
Generally very lucky to have lovely clients and work with exceptional architects. So I think it can get tense sometimes, but it tends to be the pressures of a project rather than we work with architects in a very complementary way. We talk with them, work with them, and if they've got ideas and we think they're not going to work in lighting, then obviously we work with them to find a solution that's adapt and something similar, or say, well, actually that's not probably going to work. Why don't we try this? So it's a collaborative approach. And
when do they bring you in? I mean, obviously for you, earlier the better.
Yeah.
But what's the reality of it?
Obviously, we prefer to be brought in very early on so we can inform the conceptual part of the design. And we're finding these days that the architects, interior designers, and design professionals are much more literate in lighting itself. So they quite often come to us with quite already formed ideas, and in those.
Is that good or bad?
If that happened all the time, it would be bad for us because we'd lose that conceptual side, which keeps us alive and keeps it exciting. But sometimes it's also interesting that we can take that concept and expand it and make it work as well. That's a huge part of our process, is the technical side, making sure that it actually works, because we can all draw light on a rendering very easily, but to make that work is the sort of the hard part. The swan, the paddling underwater while it's looking very serene. So
speaking of projects, should we take a look at some of those projects?
Yes, let's do.
Walk us through some.
So this is the Rosewood in Amsterdam. So we're looking at this project as it was a revival of an old building. So this was the former Palace of Justice in Amsterdam. So I think it was originally built in the 15th century, and then built on over years. So it was originally an orphanage, and then eventually became the Palace of Justice, so the law courts in Amsterdam. So this is how we found it. It was very much not derelict, but it was basically been run down over the years. And this had a lot of preservation orders. It was a historic building, so it was
So this was fully listed up. This was protected, a protected structure.
So it was fully protected. So you have this odd situation where you've got this huge, beautiful building in the centre of Amsterdam, and no one really knows what to do with it, because it had been effectively a law court with lots of offices, but it wouldn't function as a modern office building. Right. It was just not going to do that, and you couldn't really turn it into residential units or turn it into a proper office without ripping the heart out of it. Whereas turning it into a hotel, it actually retained the majority of the spaces as they were. There was very, very little of it demolished and removed. So there is this amazing thing that hotels are bringing to these old buildings in city centres that have got these preservation orders that can't really do anything else with them, and they're keeping them alive and keeping them, reviving and bringing back to life, because these places, you can see, are quite sort of sad when we arrive to them. I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but you could feel the sort of anger and the hate in these that have been, it was just a wooden board that people sat on, and there was all the graffiti scratched into it. But, there's all these elements and parts
It reminds me of our old offices, actually.
But, there's all these elements which you never get in a new build building. There's no way that anyone would build. One of these is a cloakroom now, one of them's like a little wine store, et cetera, et cetera. So there's something amazing about reviving these old buildings, because they present something that we can never create, from a blank sheet of paper.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But so this is starting. You can see the revival of this space. So you can see from the stairs there, the huge big corridors and stairways which were there for us. But one of the really difficult things in these buildings is they were designed to be very austere and very overbearing, and you were a small cog in a machine of law and bow down to the law of the land. And so you come into this building, it's cold, it's dark, and it's unwelcoming because it's designed to be like that. And the brief is, okay, make it into a beautiful 5-star luxury hotel. So it's it's quite a challenge.
Easily done.
Yeah. So obviously working with the interior designers, it's very and obviously a lot of this is preserved, so you can't say, oh well, let's just get rid of all that horrible old pink marble that's it's all preserved, so you have to work with that, gently reviving it. And we used a lot of warm lighting. We started to use tunable white in this one, so we can tune the colour temperature of the lighting throughout the day to change the experience and the feel of the space. So I'll just run you through some of the guest rooms quickly. So, obviously, the one great thing about this space, it had amazing windows. There's beautiful views out onto the canals. So, again, obviously working with interior designers to create a relaxing, cosy space, which is quite difficult when you have 5-metre ceilings.
How high?
5 metres.
5-metre ceilings?
Yes, height.
Is that too much?
It almost was. When we first started doing it, we found it really difficult because we're so used to minimising downlights in spaces because we don't want to overdo it. But where we started off, we tried to minimise it, and it just wasn't working. It just wasn't enough light reaching the floor plane because it's coming from 5 metres. And so we had to go back to the drawing board, reassess it, and work with a team to try and introduce much more lighting into a space than we perhaps normally would. All these images, you can't actually see the ceiling, which is a kind of proof of how high they were. So I'll just flick through the next one. This is I think it's called the library suite. So this is that library room you saw before. So this was a Pete Boone interior. So they inserted in a lot of the spaces to try and get it to work without damaging any of the fabric of the building. They inserted a pod for the bathroom and the toilet and everything to create a space without damaging the fabric. And in this space, it's a completely mirrored, like a smoked
Stunning.
mirror. Yeah, it's a really, really stunning space.
In terms of what you install as part of your lighting concept, if it's a protected building, do you have to touch the fabric of the building very lightly, I guess?
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't do any kind of major structural interventions. Does this mean that there has to be something almost provisional-like about what you do?
Yeah, obviously the great thing about these was that Pete Boone did was creating these boxes, so they gave us something that we can install lighting into. So that was it was a sort of freedom within there, but within the rest of the hotel ceilings, everything, it was protected. So we had to work very closely with the local authorities.
What a joy and what a challenge!
Yes,
and you're masochists, right? Because you've worked on quite a number of protected buildings.
Yeah. But you become accustomed to the needs, and the protection that they want to give to these buildings is fairly similar throughout the world. Come to realise that you can't damage the structure. You have to be very minimal in your interventions, and you have to work early on with the local authorities to make sure that they're on board. You get a dialogue, and then you can get things happening. Yeah, so I'll just show you this. So you saw that attic room earlier with the big pipes going through. So this is beautifully revived attic room. They somehow managed to, in those earlier images, you'll see that they'd supported the roof with some new steels and stuff like that. They managed to get rid of them. No idea how, but I'll zoom on quickly. So these are some of the front of house bar spaces. Which this was Sagrada did these, and this one here is a distillery. So again, you can see we're having to use a lot of lighting on tracks within boxes, etc.
This is absolutely beautiful. On the left hand side, what are you looking at there?
So this is the spa corridor here.
Spa.
So say you can, we were using tunable white. So in the morning time we could have it nice crisp white to kind of invigorate the people coming down to the spa and the gym, and then in the evenings it gets into this beautiful rich golden colour to make it a beautiful relaxing space.
And is this standard now? This idea of kind of circadian dynamic lighting?
It's not standard. It's something we try and push and do. It's obviously much more complicated in terms of just balancing the light, changing space throughout the day is an amazing tool to have. So shall I? I'll flick on quickly because we've got one more project. So this is a very similar project actually in Vienna. This is an old courthouse as well. So this was a Viennese architect, a secessionist architect, which is kind of an Art Nouveau from a version in Vienna. And again, you can see some beautiful old pieces are there already, but quite austere and quite hard and heavy, and quite difficult to. So I mean, when we first came in, there was these kind of brown, heavy columns. Oh my God! Well, how does this space change? But eventually this became this space, and you can see they've been beautifully polished, and it suddenly becomes this is of the entrance lobby. Suddenly becomes a welcoming space to those columns which were hideously sort of run down and tired.
You bring them into a dialogue, and also
Exactly.
they're reflective as well. I mean, this.
Exactly. So that's a nice thing. Bringing an old building back to life is that when we get to it, you knew that it was beautiful at one point, but it's just tired. It's been, and these places are generally sort of run down. With the maintenance has gone down, and it's just generally very tired and very sad. And bringing them back to life and making them, and sometimes better than when they were originally built. It's amazing seeing these beautiful buildings and the facades are cleaned and the windows are new, and it's a lovely part of the experience. So this is interior designer Gotthard Little Fair. So again, they introduced lots of new elements which were resonated with the original architecture, but just to soften it and bring much more a five-star experience into these quite austere spaces. And here we're in the bedroom. We were lucky that they were allowed to bring in this panelling and allowed to bring in this coffer, which as you can see, we've got very minimal downlights in this space. A lot of the work, the heavy lifting is done by the coffer lighting there. Moving on into the central space, this sort of courtyard. It's now a covered courtyard within the centre of the building, which acts as the F&B area. So there's a bar, there's a cafe, there's this central brasserie area, and again you can see this is a sort of warmer element where we're warming up into the evening. So again, the lighting in here in a breakfast setting, it's nice and crisp and white, invigorating you at the start of the day, and then in the evening it comes much down into much warmer, cozier. And a lot of time it's Vienna, so quite often there's snow on the roof there. So it's a big open space. It can feel quite cold if you're not careful. So bringing this changeable warm lighting into the space can
and that
really
snow can make it feel quite clinical, kind of.
Exactly. And as I say, it's a big open space with a big glazing, so it can feel quite cold.
Absolutely stunning. I think everyone here in the audience would like to be there right now. Can I ask you about what you think, in your long and deep experience of being a lighting consultant, what's like the biggest mistake that's often made in terms of lighting interior architectural spaces?
That's a tricky one.
Or the top few.
Because you always look at a space and you never know what's happened in a project, so you never know where that mistake might have come from. So we don't sort of go around complaining and pointing out mistakes. But I think for me the biggest mistake of lighting design is if lighting is an applied layer over the top of the interior architecture or the interior design, when it has no cohesion with the interior. Lighting should be, as you were saying earlier, if you walk into a space and you think it's beautiful, it shouldn't necessarily because you go, oh, it's a lighting. It should just be part of a harmonious part of that space. And the only time, as you say, you really notice it is when it's bad, and you go, okay, so the lighting's terrible here. I'm just going to skip through the spaces here. This is the Vienna we were talking about here. So this is the render we got from the interior designers, and then this is our render that we added to the lighting, and then you get into the space itself. So this is all the same, and we've lost the copper lighting in the sort of the upper reveal because it just wasn't working at the time when these pictures were taken, but it is there. But my happy place, I took this picture. I don't know if you can see, there's a cat in front of me. It's a happy place too. But fire is so emotive to humans.
Look, the counter is ticking down to. I would love to carry on talking to you, Nicholas, but I'm afraid time is our enemy. But this is a beautiful image to end on, really, even though I can't see the cat. But thanks so much, and a big round of applause to Nicholas Belfield from DPA for being such a brilliant speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas.